the Flokes. Sandor Legavaldi. Legavaldi. You see the title, you know what it's all about. I'm gonna hit it. Here's what's on CNN right now, just in case you're wondering. No, you weren't. All right, we're gonna hit what is in the title right now. As soon as we get the producer to get his act together here. Boys, are you with me? Take your mic.
Should I be unmuted?
Yeah, you should be unmuted.
I could sign language.
How are we, boys?
We're good.
Good, man.
I'm good. I'm not going to speak for Jeff. Are you good?
I'm good. I think I might have a bit of a technical issue, so let me work it out. I've got this thing playing in the background as well as a recording, so I apologize about that.
No problem. Okay, I pulled up a little bit of news here. You can see it in the background. Sandor, maybe you can start us off by just giving us a recap, a quick hitter on what we're here for and what this is all about. I really haven't been paying attention. There's been so much other stuff that's been grinding on me as far as demanding my attention. This hasn't been it, but you've been there and
absolutely
you're on it. So lead us off and tell us what it's all about.
Well, it's March 16th now, and this is a story we're going to talk about on January 21st. Okay. And so on the 21st, there was a Niagara Regional Council meeting, and an integrity commissioner report came through about comments that member Dave Bylsma made on the radio in the previous summer. And basically they upped the ante in the meeting, going beyond the integrity commissioner's recommendation. And so we're going to look at some of the moments of that meeting. At one point, Mayor Jim Diodati said that it was a Goosepile. And so we're going to go through the Goosepile this afternoon, and hopefully we'll learn something. This is what we're talking about is an infiltration of critical race theory into the civic institution. It's exactly what's taking place here. So if you're wondering, why do you care about this inside small town or local politics? This is the big politics having infiltrated, and this is a case of basically a culture war. This is culture war moments. This is critical race theory having raised its flag, if you will.
Jeff, you got any thoughts on what went down?
Well, I think ultimately what happened was an integrity commissioner complaint was made, and it went through the process, and an interview that had happened back last summer where Mayor Bylsma was talking about what had happened with raising the pride flag sort of stirred up some controversy. And many people in the community were upset, as they have a right to be, as everyone in the community has a right to be, when they feel something said by a councillor that is offensive. And I think what happened is we sort of highlighted as we went through this process is both the good and the bad of what an integrity commissioner process is. We deserve as taxpayers a really good process. And that's really a challenge when we're paying money for professionals to review the integrity of our councillors, that we get a really good, solid, experienced view of what each person's roles and responsibilities are. And I don't think that we really got a good view of that. I think, there are some flaws in the integrity commissioner process that sort of came up with this. We saw that some of the way council handled it was difficult. So my summary is really, what is the integrity commissioner process? What are the rights and responsibilities of everyone involved? And really, how should councillors who are looking at a violation of a fellow councillor, how should they behave, and what sort of things should they say and what sort of things should they not say?
Is there a concern amongst any of you too that our code of conduct doesn't sync with the charter? Shouldn't all our codes be respective of the charter? It seems like they overstep it in so many ways as far as the limitations of freedoms. So what are your thoughts on, I would have thought that we had a provincial code that was the same region to region, municipality to municipality. Is anybody concerned about the lack of consistency as far as these codes go in relation to the charter?
I am. I mean, I think ultimately what we're seeing is a step along the way of the integrity commissioner's process. We're not at an endpoint with this process. We need to sort of think critically about what it is, where it's going, you know, how cost effective is it? Is it a good thing for our community? Is, you know, are Ed Smith's rights respected during this? Are David Bylsma's rights respected during this? And what about the other councilors? What are their responsibilities as they review this, and where might they have gone wrong? Constitutionally, freedom of speech is like the most important freedom we have.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean that that it outranks others. They're all the same, but it's probably the most important one we have because it's the way we achieve justice on all the other points of the charter that we need to respect for everyone.
Sandor, you got thoughts on that?
Well, there's no internal consistency. It's not just merely, is it consistent with the charter, which I think is a great point to make, but it's not. The consistency is what so basically they use, one side uses words against the other side, but the other side never gets the opportunity to use words against the other.
You never get the chance to face your accuser in this situation.
Say again?
You never get the chance to face your accuser or see the complaint in this situation either, which is kind of crazy. Like, this is a kangaroo court. This is way above any jurisprudence of any court that we've ever had. And that's why I don't know why it continues to stand.
In the case, sorry, I'll go ahead, Jeff.
I think in this case, Jim, we may have seen an iteration since previous ones that you might have had experience with. I think David Bylsma did see the complaint, and I believe that he did have a chance to respond. And I think there was, you know, a pretty significant back and forth, at least from the integrity commissioner's report. It's pretty obvious there was a pretty significant back and forth there. So, but I also think that, you know, given the fact that Ed Smith is also a appointee to the NPCA, there's a level of responsibility that Ed has in his comments as well while he's going through that, and making sure that he's respectful to Councilor Bylsma, as with all the other councilors. I think, you know, ultimately, this can't just be a process where people make unsubstantiated claims where they're not held to a standard, you know, a prima facie standard of making sure that their claims are substantiated, that people know exactly where in the code of conduct there might be a violation. And I think that's really a challenge, because from Ed Smith's perspective, he's looking at it as a Black man in his own statements who's 58 years old, and he feels he's a good judge of what is racism. And, you know, it's hard to argue that point, but still the integrity commissioner is responsible to enforce the code of conduct the way it's written. And I think that ultimately there is a certain amount of free speech that needs to be considered. And
Sandor, tell me what.
I absolutely think that the integrity commissioner made a major mistake in the assessment that was made. At the end of the day, it was, don't criticize the Black Lives Matter. It was just, don't do it. That was the walk away lesson. If you say all lives matter, in some quarters, that's what they said, quote. So I mean, we have some of that in our list, in our link list. We're going to go through some of the integrity commissioner.
Maybe just maybe I don't know if we
Black
did
Lives
this.
Matter, about the pride flag.
This might be a little bit too far into it, but just put a point on first what happened. Okay, so Mayor Bylsma, is it West Lincoln or Lincoln?
I think it's Bylsma.
West Lincoln.
Bylsma. Listen, you're no one to be. You are no one to be insisting on the correct pronunciation of names. Dude.
I'm Sandor Liggett-Falvey. Okay.
So, anyways,
yes, my apologies for mispronouncing Mayor Bylsma's
yeah, I know.
I got the wrong one.
I just started saying Bylsma. I was Bylsma before. Anyways, Sandor, give us on a point what happened. He came out and said he's the mayor of West Lincoln, is it? Or Lincoln? Easton's.
That's right, West Lincoln.
West Lincoln. So Easton's in Lincoln. And Lincoln.
Well, the critical race theory proponents took the opportunity of the Integrity Commissioner report to turn council chambers into political theater. And for over an hour, there was a series of lofty statements, virtue signals, and denouncements. Very, very disrespectful towards Dave Bylsma. He has explicitly stated that he has a independent, previously existing belief system, which he identifies as Christian conservatism. And it's that belief system, which he says is a love your neighbors as yourself belief system. It's an egalitarian belief model, but it doesn't allow him to subscribe to the activistic program that we understand as Black Lives Matter. He understands.
Sandor, I think it's important that we let Dave speak for his own belief system. And he does in this meeting on January
21st. On January 21st, he speaks his own beliefs clearly.
Yes,
I'm practically quoting him.
Right, but I mean it's his beliefs that he can speak for. I think we're here to sort of talk about, is he entitled to have certain beliefs, and as long as they're not infringing on the rights of others.
Yeah, he is entitled by the Code of Conduct document, which specifies that that beliefs shall not be imposed upon. So he has beliefs. They aren't immoral beliefs. They have a moral foundation. And so according to the Code of Conduct, his beliefs should be respected at all times. It says there in black and white. He has beliefs. Yeah. His beliefs preclude him from participating in the activism called Black Lives Matter. And so his beliefs have become the central contention of the January 21st Goosepile.
Okay, where do you want
They said to him his beliefs won't change. They said his mind won't change as they tried to
Sandor,
castigate him.
I think it's important that we let Mayor Bylsma speak for his own beliefs and what he would have or would not have participated in, because I think what happened during this radio interview is he was there to discuss what had happened in relation to an issue about raising the flag, the pride flag. And he was there to sort of talk about what had happened, and he immediately accepted responsibility for the fact that there had been a miscommunication. And he was talking about, the fact that he wanted to have an open discussion where everyone participated about a flag raising policy. And so that's what happened. It was during that discussion, as he was trying to lay out why he believed that maybe a one flag system might be better, and that, we not necessarily get into controversy over raising other flags might be the appropriate way to go. But he was also suggesting that he wanted to hear from everyone in the community, that there would be a full public discussion, and that people from the Pride movement would be involved. And, from what I heard, it sounded like a very fair process. There was some pushback by the radio commentator that maybe we shouldn't be asking any questions about raising the pride flag, that in itself might be disrespectful. And I think, during that sort of exchange, that's where some of the comments in question came up that were, were considered to be by members of the community.
All right, let's run
The
through
Integrity
these.
Commissioner report says that Mayor Bylsma crossed the line when he began to question Black Lives Matter and the Pride movement. And that, I think, is the controversy of the report. The result of the report is that Mayor Bylsma and anyone like him, which is someone who's not part of the political establishment, someone on the outside of the political establishment, has a no-go zone. You're not allowed to criticize it. That's what the precedent that's been set in both the Integrity Commissioner report and then the Goosepile January 21st bullying session. So that we should start taking a look at the clips. We're gonna listen to. I mean, Jim, obviously you have some stuff to say, but when we get to the clips, we're going to listen to Ed Smith's sets the moral foundation of why they made amendments. The amendments were to take Dave off of some boards, and then we'll listen to Mayor Sendzik say that All Lives Matter is a dog whistle to white supremacy, and we'll listen to Member Yip saying that everyone's racist because we're part of a racist system, and then we'll listen to Dave Bylsma as he's grieved to be forced to apologize for his beliefs.
I think as an introduction to that, Jim, it might be interesting to just say that what happened here was there was an Integrity Commissioner investigation and a report generated by the Integrity Commissioner, during which time they went through a pretty lengthy process. And one of the things that I think is of concern is it was written by sort of an underling of who was hired to be the Integrity Commissioner and then reviewed at the end. And so the substance of the report is really the writings of this Michael Maynard, who is a junior person within this firm and who has a political history, which might be opposed to that of Dave Bylsma. So there might be a question of, was there some bias in the way the report was written? And, does it give us a really good understanding of how the Integrity Commissioner process should work and how Ed's rights and Councilor Bylsma, Mayor Bylsma, whichever role he's in, participates in this process. We want to know, does everyone get a fair shake? So we're going to
I guess my concern is that all the man did was come out and say all lives matter. That's what my Christian faith is founded on. He's not even going to the extreme like I do very often and saying these turkeys are terrorists. Like straight up, they're setting fire to cities all over the place. Anyway, Sandor, where do you want me to start as far as links go?
These were comments in June while cities were burning. Mm-hmm. While cities were burning, and in fact, more people died after his comments because of the riots. Mm-hmm. He wasn't off point in criticizing that particular activist movement, in my view.
Right. What do you want to hit first, Sandor?
Number one on the list, bro?
Well, number one on the list was this.
That's Ed Smith. That's right. Let's take a listen.
Okay.
The question then, Ed, is that do you understand that Councillor Bylsma did take some training as well?
At West Lincoln, I am aware of that. However, yes, I'll just say I am aware of that.
Okay, so my next question will be, and how do you feel about that?
I think we all take training when we're mandated to. I will note that, as I said, he has defended his comments and said that he speaks for citizens, his constituents who have contacted him and supported his comments. And he has said, doesn't their opinion matter also? And I think that's the kind of thing that cannot be undone. That's a rallying cry for a certain segment of our society that are looking for that leader that will represent their views that we do not accept. And we can't allow those rallying cries to even begin to nurture or give them a place to nurture and take form. We need to not allow that to start to happen.
The question then.
Sandor?
Well, he says right there's a certain segment of our society looking for a leader to represent their views, and we cannot accept that. We cannot allow that to even begin to nurture. This is the moral foundation of the delegation prior to the amendments. So the amendments were suggested by Ed Smith, and then he says basically that this is to silence a certain segment of society. If you think that All Lives Matter is a superior moral statement to Black Lives Matter, you're silenced. And Niagara Regional Council went along with it. So he's making a proposal, and he says, we can't allow these rallying cries to even begin to nurture, to take form. That's literal political suppression. That is anti-democratic political suppression. It is. I mean, I know he thinks that he's trying to prevent racists from being racist, but that's not in practice what's taking place here.
So I think there's a couple of things that we have to understand about what the context of this video is. Number one, there was an amendment that came as a result of the report that came from the Integrity Commissioner, and it recommended a reprimand. It found that the statements violated the code. It wasn't a specific part, it was a whole section, and it wasn't laid out specifically. So you could never really look at it and see, well, this statement related to this part or this statement related to that part. It was really not very well written. But I think what happens is the Integrity Commissioner is supposed to, by the bylaw, make a recommendation, provide, if it's a reprimand, provide a letter of reprimand, and council's supposed to accept it for information purposes. So this entire process really shouldn't have happened. This whole additional items that they're considering. What they're considering as an amendment is should he be taken off any boards, commissions, or agencies of the region. And so what Ed is proposing here is that that they go beyond what was recommended by the Integrity Commissioner, and in fact, what's allowed in their own bylaw, and even beyond that, what's allowed by the provincial law that makes both of those possible. So they're being asked to break the law and to do something extra to punish them. And so from Sandor's perspective, he's saying that what they're trying to do is repress certain people from being represented. And that's really not what the Integrity Commissioner is supposed to do. And it's really not what the Code of Conduct is supposed to do. Code of Conduct is meant to be there to make it an inclusive society. And one of the reasons why there is this kind of slap on the wrist type mentality to the Integrity Commissioner and the Code of Conduct is because we're not meant to be punishing people for anything. What we're trying to do is create a representative democracy where everyone can participate equally. Now, I think there's a really strong sense from Ed here. In fact, I think he says it, that there are things that David Bylsma represents that he doesn't want to have a political voice. And I've spoken to this man, and I've watched his interview. And although he has said some things that I think could be offensive, and I think everyone has a right to go through the process and try and get corrections, I don't think the man is racist. And I don't think he is anti-LGBTQ. And I don't think he's anti-Indigenous, although I really didn't like his remarks about
I agree with that.
the indigenous or some of the other groups that he referred to. So I think what's really happening here is we've got a situation where there's a repression of representation of what was essentially David Bylsma's religious views, which is all lives matter. And that fundamental statement is consistently applied across all civil actions, civil activist groups, whichever one we're referring to. If we look at the Pride movement and we go to, for instance, the Metro Toronto Community Church, they in fact say everyone's welcome. It's a version of all lives matter. If we go to the BME Church in St. Catharines, the terminus of the Underground Railway, they in fact say they're a civil activist church. And their motto is everyone is welcome, a version of all lives matter. So I think what we have here is this kind of dissonance that's sort of built up from American politics, that we have to oppose something so much that we have to build hate towards it and we have to suppress it. And I think this is a really big problem that we have as we bring things across the border and as we look at how do we represent the need to support Black people in their journey for representation.
This seems like a classic example of overreach, and I miss the days of Bart Maves, even though I wasn't a conservative. I really appreciated that he knew the rule book, Robert's Rules of Orders. He would stand up and say, this is out of order. And I feel like somebody should have stood up and said, hey, listen, we've got an Integrity Commission report that recommends a punishment or a censoring or whatever of this man, and that's it. We don't go above and beyond all that. And, there's just no mosh pit on YouTube says there's no accountability for politicians breaking the laws or the Charter of Rights. Like, how do we keep them in line? It's almost like the institutional memory's gone with Bart Maves from the standpoint that he's not.
Something's wrong with your audio, Jim.
Well,
I'm getting a feedback loop.
Yeah, we're getting a little bit from your end too. I don't know if it's you've got two. It seems like it's the feedback through your speakers. Maybe I don't know if it's too loud there or what. But anyways, it seems like a classic example of overreach.
Well, I'd have to say that, it just goes to show that the process itself needs to improve and needs to evolve. And I think this goes back to what you were saying earlier, Jim, in that you would sort of think that there would be a hashed out standard put forth by the province for what the code of conduct should look like and, what integrity commissioners should do. And I think that's really why you really expect an integrity commissioner to be a very senior person, probably a former lawyer who's got a lot of experience with human rights, but also, the other part of the integrity commissioner is they're supposed to look at when there's impropriety or conflict of interest. So they have to have that sort of duality. Instead, what we got was a report written by a mildly experienced, possibly lawyer, but not a very senior experienced person writing these reports. You really need a good sound amount of judgment. I think what ends up happening is the comments that Ed Smith made sort of lead Walter Sendzik and Councillor Yip to make some very offensive statements towards Mayor Bylsma, in that Councillor Mayor Sendzik goes on and says he is dog whistling to white supremacy, which is an incredibly offensive thing to say to a person.
It actually kind of might be dangerous, because if you call someone out as a Nazi, then they get treated a certain way.
Yeah, and
then call someone a white supremacist, you're out of the club of civilization.
And the mob comes after.
Councillor Yip goes on to say that the comments were racist anti-LGBTQ and or homophobic. I'm not sure which one. And then anti-Indigenous. I mean, these comments are really not appropriate under the code of conduct and could possibly have been a sanction themselves.
Jump in,
and so I think
I completely agree. That's what motivated me in the first place, to put all the clips together, to write a whole document, to hashtag Goosepile. I completely agree that, as I said off the top, they turned it into political theater. And it says, according to the code of conduct, that the purpose of it is to maintain order. It's not to facilitate political dunking.
What's this next clip here?
And I don't mean to.
Ed Smith continues to outline how this is a moral issue, saying that Bylsma is out of step with our core community values, and all options should be on the table to minimize the impact of that behavior. So, I mean, there it is.
Meaningless, but he clearly does not represent our greater community. I believe there is a duty to prevent him, to the extent possible, from being in a position that may serve to intimidate or offend staff, citizens, or colleagues.
My right to offend and speak surpasses your right not to be offended. Come on. Is there more in this clip here, or are we going to the next one?
Nope. So and then the text on that thread. So jump to Goosepile. So then here we go. So here's all if you can open that image up, you're going to see that's the speaking list of the January 21st Goosepile. Okay. And the text in red are items that I feel are problematic, condescending, disrespectful, or insulting toward member Bylsma in council. So while Dave made comments on the radio in general, undirected, unspecified, just speaking his mind, these comments were made directly to him about him in front of his peers. So we're going to see clips from Houston, yep, and sends it. And then I didn't get clips of Darte and Edgar.
That's okay. We don't want to see them anyways. But tell me what your standouts are on this list here.
Bottom line is here. I need to follow up on some of the things that Jeff pointed out. In my view, I mean, not that he said anything wrong. I agree with everything he said. Just to add to it. Actually, I forgot. Let's just get to the clips. Fuck it.
And we're going to have to take a commercial break here and switch over if we're going much longer here. I just got to notice. So what stands out on this list here? Before we
because we're going to see the clips, okay. I'll just point out that Darte calls it unrepentant. Basically, they impose a sanction, which is to remove him from the boards, and also say his mind won't change, which to me indicates that they're trying to change his mind, which to me indicates that they're breaking the code of conduct. Because the code of conduct, you have it right there. Is that the code of conduct?
No,
Scroll
this
up.
is.
Yeah, he did have something. Scroll back up there, Jim.
Yeah, let's see it, because we've been talking a lot about it.
This is really important, and it's
go ahead, Jeff.
Section 2 under respect, truth, and honesty, that members of council shall not impose their personal, moral, or religious standards on others. So, here's David Bylsma, and he didn't say that he disrespected or opposed Black Lives Matter. What he said is he would have stood with a sign that says all lives matter. And I think what he was responding to was the fact that by the point that he was making the comments, we had seen some of the violence that had happened as a result of the riots. And at this point, there were calls for peace and calm by the family of George Floyd. And what we were seeing is shop owners and business people, Black business people in the community who had their livelihoods destroyed. And really what was happening early on was this idea that we need to treat everyone in our community with respect. We need to respect everyone. It was a call by the family early on to say, let's respect all lives. And then it became political. And there was a huge discussion because it was picked up by the American election cycle. And we saw political operators trying to pit one against the other. But fundamentally, it was a civil rights activist who suggested to the family of George Floyd to get up and ask for calm and to remember that everyone's life matters. So it was during that initial speech by George Floyd's brother that there was this movement to try and bring control to the process, that although everyone was mad about what happened to George Floyd, we still needed to understand that we can't just destroy the community that we live in order to represent that to the world. And so I think Dave Bylsma was saying the reason he would hold the All Lives Matter sign, and he explained this multiple times, is because it's a part of his fundamental beliefs that we need to understand that some communities are facing challenges. And we need to work with that, but we can't do it in such a way that it's destructive to everyone else. And I think that's what he was trying to explain, trying to paraphrase, multiple comments across multiple things.
He said,
that in itself, once explained.
After 30 years, he said, after 30 years, we're more violent, we're yelling at each other louder, and we're becoming more polarized. I blame identity politics. That was Bylsma's quote.
Yeah, and I think that's very, that's a very acceptable statement from, the political discourse.
Okay, next up here, Sandor.
Next up on our list. So we didn't scroll down on number 2.
Okay.
Scroll down on, no, that's number 3. There's number 2. Scroll down on that one.
Okay.
And you're going to get video clips. And so now we'll hear some condescension.
Here it would be, open your ears to the experiences of others. Often they are different than yours. Open your eyes and attempt to view with an alternate lens, help you see the feelings of others more clearly. And open your mind to the possibility of thinking differently, because it can make you a better person. So there's a lesson to be learned here. And it's a lesson in humility and humanity. And we can all strive to be better human beings.
They are really trying to teach this man a lesson and change his faith, the way he thinks. And this is the scourge.
And he's deaf, and he's blind, and he's not yet a better person. A better person.
I think this is kind of one of the things that I see as a challenge by the process. And, it's a good reason why they should just accept it for information purposes.
Right.
Ultimately, what happens here is people are trying to score political points by showing how representative they are of the community. And they're doing it by, in fact, being prejudiced against this guy and saying that you can't have these views. You are not allowed in this community to have these. So hopefully I'm back.
Live
Where
TV.
that didn't have too much of an issue from your free Zoom account.
You sucker. Never miss an opportunity to blast the host, your free Zoom account.
Well, I think everyone through this pandemic, that's one thing that we've learned is the limits of a free Zoom account. So, listen, it's we sort of left off right in the middle of a thought there, and it really comes down to, why council should, refrain from making these types of comments, because the code of conduct really doesn't permit them to make extensive comments about other people, especially other councilors. It specifically says, they should not do this. I didn't really have any issues with what Councillor Hewson was saying there. I mean, she has a right to those views and that opinion, but it's not really permitted by the code of conduct that she give them in the midst of a council meeting. And the other ones are really quite offensive. Those are the Senzik one and Councillor Yep. They really do go far beyond the code of conduct in making the statements that they do.
I agree that the Houston's comments didn't have an intent of malice or harm, but they were off the top of a hour-long Goosepile. And so I've included the comments to both demonstrate the unconscious condescension as well as, it kept going. It set the tone. So she's a nice lady. She takes her moral stand, and then it's like, oh, she set the ball rolling. Let's all make little speeches. So I've included it for that reason.
All right. Cool.
And if you scroll down in the thread, you'll see Laura Yip's response, which is getting into the heart of the critical race theory.
In that radio interview, Bylsma have an impact on our communities. Statements like the ones made in that radio interview, understandably, make members of our communities wonder if or how well they are represented, and further make them hesitant to reach out to their councillors with their concerns, and we have to recognize that. I know that everyone here likes to believe that they're not racist, but the fact of the matter is that even those of us who are actively anti-racist, by virtue of operating in a system that is racist, are racist. The key is that we have to be aware of the issues within our various systems and work to make them more equitable and inclusive. The kinds of statements made in that radio interview must be widely condemned. Not doing so calls into question both the councillors and this council's concern for equity-seeking communities and its ability to represent those communities. Thank you.
I'm getting so tired of red speeches, man. Just say what you think. If you got some notes, that's fine. Just stop reading to me, for crying out loud. Show some freaking heart. Whatever. Small matter.
I think this one is a little bit more difficult, and it comes down to, the Integrity Commissioner's report does give him a sanction, and it does not conclude that he is racist or any of these other things. And these are statements that Laura Yip is drawing from her own, thoughts towards David Bylsma. It's also in part because that's what's alleged by Ed Smith in his complaints. He does allege these things and never really specifically says how that was achieved. I think ultimately the Integrity Commissioner found that there was a sanctionable action by Mayor Bylsma, but there's really no reason for Councillor Yip to be making these types of statements in the middle of a council meeting. It's really going to create an environment where there's a significant amount of fear for the community to come forward and express their concerns about an issue such as raising the flag, and what that means. I mean, what does that mean for a community? We don't we don't really know, and how else are we going to know unless we ask, you know, a group that comes forward, what is it that this will do besides helping you feel the community is more inclusive? You know,
what do you
for
feel
instance,
like the long-term effects or the precedents might be set here? What's the worry moving forward that if we let this slide that we're going to see in the future?
Well, I think it means that we won't be able to discuss certain political issues. And that is never a good thing. I mean, the way things, even if you believe, as I do, that we need to be more inclusive to these communities, what we need to do is we need to do it in a reasonable way. We can't set it up in a situation where we could never question a bad policy that might be done in the name of one of these groups. We don't know, for instance, if raising the pride flag might also mean that the community is expected to have a sex ed curriculum of a certain content. We don't know that. Is that what it means once we've raised that flag? That's a legitimate question. So
flag represents territory. The flag's presence means we have this territory, and the competition with the Canadian flag is significant because in order to symbolically represent the meaningfulness of the territory, the Canadian flag has been supplanted with specialty flag, with the new morals.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to sound hostile towards any group that advocates for raising a flag. I really want to say that it's about being able to speak to issues and understand what the issues mean. Some of these groups do not
get her off the screen. Get her off the screen. Thank you.
Do not have consistently, a consistent policy that they're trying to advocate for. And it's really hard for each individual municipality or school board, for instance, to evaluate these things before they agree to such a policy. So, there might be some value to a single flag policy, but it's hard to have those discussions in an environment where if you do it, people are going to call you anti something. That's not what our political theater is supposed to be about. It's supposed to be about, allowing free discourse on multiple topics from multiple different viewpoints. And I think that's really right. What was missed from Dave Bylsma's interview is exactly what he was advocating during that interview, is that there is going to be a meeting, there will be people invited, and people will be heard, and a decision will be made. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, that is the kind of process that we should all expect and respect.
Long-term effects, Sandor? Thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, well, we're just going back to Yip for a moment. She did up the ante from what the Integrity Commissioner determined was discriminatory comments and up the ante to making them anti-Black, anti-Indigenous. And I think Jeff made that point prior, and I just wanted to underscore that point, that the Integrity Commissioner merely remarked that they are discriminatory, which I actually disagree with. According to the code, I don't agree with that assessment, but I'm not an Integrity Commissioner, so I move past that point. But Yip upped the ante to paint Bylsma into her political corner of choice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's
how
you
let's get back to that
people.
thread, because we'll get to Sendzik. And Sendzik directly calls All Lives Matter the dog whistle. And the only reference of dog whistle in the Integrity Commissioner report is from Ed Smith, who accuses it of being a dog whistle, but the Integrity Commissioner didn't actually substantiate that. It's just the accusation from Ed Smith, who made the complaint and then served as the delegate. And so Ed Smith was put on the NPCA in 2019 from the city of St. Catharines. So Walter Senzik sent, or not Walter Senzik, but his city sent a board member to the NPCA, Ed Smith. And so we'll get into some of the backstory on that in a minute. But I just wanted to, these aren't people who don't know each other. Ed Smith isn't just a random upset community member. He's a player in the game, just so you know.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Ed is a good community activist. I think we should all respect Ed. He's done a lot of good things as well. And I'm not trying to single him out or any of the councilors here. I'm just trying to encourage them to think about how do we respect each other in this broad political environment that we live in, and how do we make sure that everyone has a free voice and can participate in the discussion. I don't think that Bylsma intended to make harmful comments. I think he may have had that impact on people, but he clearly explained that the reasons were that he believes that everyone should be included, and that is not an offensive belief.
This is how you deplatform people. Their opinion means nothing because they're a white supremacist. So I think, talking about a dog whistle, this is certainly a straw man, if not a dog whistle, that for someone to say they stand behind the remark that all lives matter, I don't want to go down this road
and then
necessarily.
attach that to an amendment.
This idea. Yeah, go ahead.
That was attached to an amendment. So it wasn't just making comments and then let's move on. It's, I'm making these comments and here's an amendment. And that amendment means you can't sit on the NPCA board and other boards because you might offend people. So let's listen to it. He looks pissed. Yeah, we should recognize at the beginning of this thing, this is the wrong, what is that?
Yeah,
You're looking at old stuff. You should be looking for number.
This is 3.
Number 2, scroll down.
This is 2.
You probably, you're a prolific tweeter there. How do I pronounce your name properly? I don't want to offend you.
No, I won't be offended.
Sandor?
Yeah.
Do I say Sandor?
Sandor.
This is 1. There's
an
nothing.
SH sound.
This is 1. There's nothing there, is there? We looked at that already.
So you saw it's the same one that starts with the list.
You keep going back to this one, Jim. There's a comparison here between
let's talk about
Yip and Robin DiAngelo, who's the author who wrote White Fragility and who
That's right.
Her,
and since I've made the comparison, I'd like to say that I actually think that Laura Yip is less of a grifter. I think that she has more integrity and reason to exist in the community than Robin DiAngelo's absolute grift. All that Robin DiAngelo does is tour around the country, profiting off of this grift. Whereas I'd say that Yip is a legitimate member of the community and much less worse of a person than Robin DiAngelo. Just because I made the comparison, I want to point that out.
Well, I think, the work of Robin DiAngelo is in creating inclusion at the corporate level. She sells services for inclusion. And I think she has good intent. Unfortunately, I read her book, and the Black community is not necessarily 100% behind it. I think it's kind of a mixed response. There is one writer, McWhorter, who is a professor at the University of Columbia, and he has a pretty strong view that it's really pejorative towards Black people. So I think it's kind of been a mixed review, but it's been extremely well received by white women, and it's made the top bestseller list, for
they're going to start teaching this in school too.
Years.
I don't know if I can find that link, Sandor.
Go back. Do you have your email?
Yeah.
Well, why don't we just talk about what it is that?
Well, we got to hear him. He's all griff. Oh, I wanted to say, so prior to any
Where
of the
is it here?
Goosepile, Bylsma spoke first, and he said he doubled down. So I should set the context that he did say at the up front of the meeting, double down on his view, and then everyone was all shaking their head. Oh my God, I can't believe he said that. All lives matter. Oh my God. So when we see Senzik, which is, you got to scroll down from link number 2.
Okay.
Which is, if you go back from the there you go. Just, yeah, scroll down from link 2 and you'll be fine.
Oh, I must have closed.
Scroll down and you'll see Senzik.
Okay.
And for the people at home, at WTF Niagara, hashtag Mayor Bylsma did nothing wrong, hashtag
They stand behind
Goosepile. Follow along. I've written accompanying text to go with each of these. So please share and like it. I mean, we can speak to ourselves as much as possible, but we do need some people to reach out with this information.
Quiet on the set.
It's a really involved process.
And this is to the utmost respect of all of our councilors, for someone to say that they stand behind the remarks that all lives matter. And I don't want to get into a discussion about the semantics or the history of it, but it is very much a dog whistle for white supremacy to use the all lives matter. You can't take that out of context. It's within the context of how we feel today. It's in the context of what's happening around us. And so I think I would like to make a recommendation that for a period of time he would be removed from the organizations that we've appointed him to for a period of time. And
wow,
that would be a recommendation I'd like to make. And come down to
amendment to the amendment. Yes.
Are we just discussing?
So they call it the amendment to the amendment because, as we haven't mentioned it yet. They call it the amendment to the amendment because Houston made an amendment to circulate notice of the Integrity Commissioner's report to West Lincoln. And I'm not actually sure what that means. Does it mean they put up like posters on lampposts, or they had a bulletin board, or I'm not sure what that means. It's not in any of the municipal act requirements. So it's an ad hoc. It was an ad hoc amendment. Then this is the amendment.
We're going to get into a lot of technicalities here that I don't think really, we're going to lose a lot of people who are watching. We don't need to really understand the process that they're going through, but I think what's important about this clip is really what Walter Senzik is saying. And he's saying that all lives matter, this inclusive statement that sort of got its start with the brother of George Floyd calling for calm.
Oh, no way it did. There's no way it did. All Lives Matter has been the anti-Black Lives Matter hashtag for 7 years. So, like, come on. I'm just saying, like, that's not accurate. That's not an accurate telling of where the origins of All Lives Matters is. You can contextualize it in that way, and I agree with that contextualization because it's morally true, but factually, it's not true. All lives matter far precedes. Yeah,
but I think
I don't want to.
If I understand that it's offensive to people, and the community does have a right to say that in this process. But ultimately, the foundation of All Lives Matter is this inclusive, central premise that we find across all these movements. And in fact, it's something that we see right outside the regional headquarters. Right there, you see everyone welcome. It's this idea that everyone is included.
Yeah, and we should point out that lives matter is referring to the deaths of people. So the counterpoint that they're making is, hey, this is what they said on the radio. This is what they said to him, to Dave on the radio was, hey, their house is on fire. We're not going to douse all of the houses in water, only the house that's on fire. So I'm just trying to, we all understand that they have an argument to make. I think that on the Jim Fannin show, there's been lots of deconstruction of the statistical validity of that position, and we're not going to get into that now. But just to say, like, I do think it is a little crass when people are protesting to counter protest. I understand the crassness and the offensiveness. I get it. I just want to say I get it. And I'm, but then nevertheless, all lives matter. BLM is a Marxist movement. They're tearing down statues in an iconoclasm. People have died, billions of dollars in property damage.
I totally disagree with that. I mean, I do think there have been, as a result of the Black Lives Matter protests, there have been escalations that have caused issues, many issues, a lot of civil unrest, a lot of rioting, and
over 30 murders, Jeff. 30 murders. 30, including David Dorn.
That is something to say, to have a discussion about what is the right process. But I also want to make it clear that these are not Canadian problems. The problems we have with race in Canada has a particular set of problems, but these are not problems that occurred in Canada. When we had peaceful Black Lives Matter protests in Canada, they did not escalate into murders. They did not escalate into riots. So those are the American problems. And I think what we need to do when we look at these problems is really put them in the right context and say that we have an opportunity here to make our mark by being more inclusive of everyone. And that includes Councillor Bylsma, and it includes Ed Smith, and it includes, Laura Yip, and it includes Walter Senzik. Let's make sure the conversation remains simple. Let's make sure that it respects the code of conduct. Let's even improve the code of conduct so that people really know how they should be behaving, because apparently they don't.
Do you see future codes of conduct complaints coming forward because of what happened here?
I mean, I think it's possible. There are offending statements made during that meeting. I actually hope they don't. I really don't want to see our community spending a lot of money on dealing with these issues. I think we should be able to try and resolve these outside of the Integrity Commissioner process. And I really think that what should have happened is we should have acknowledged that the community itself had a very large discussion about this, and it actually had a very positive effect. I learned things about things that were going on in the reserve as a result of this. I learned things about what's going on in the LGBTQ community. I learned things about what's going on in the religious community. I learned things about the Black Lives Matter movement and what's going on, how people felt about those. It was actually a very positive thing. He made an offensive statement to many groups. And as a result of that, we had a very positive discussion overall. I think ultimately that's why we have to realize that sometimes you have to say something offensive in order to get a positive result for everyone.
Sandor, do you think anything else comes out of this as far as Integrity Commissioner complaints? I mean, we've seen a lot of language out of some of these councilors that it's been nothing short of degrading, basically.
Well, it's a bit of a process. I looked into it. I was at one point planning on providing an Integrity Commissioner complaint regarding this. It's almost like it's too deep. I'd have to file like 7 complaints. Obviously the one complaint would be with, if just one, it would be with Member Senzik regarding the dog whistle comment. I think what your question is this setting a precedent which will be followed up upon? And I think that's part of what concerned me about this is some of the comments that were made to Dave were don't reoffend, which means don't talk about this again. So they were saying, I'm good with him being off the boards for 1 year, but if he reoffends, we can revisit it. So what, in 2022, if he says all lives matter, he can't be on the board again? So he's zipped. Don't say it, Dave. Don't say it to anyone who's like Dave. Don't be Dave's neighbor and say it. Don't be the next guy next year. That's why you're asking about precedent. And that's why I've been concerned and launched this whole, hashtag. Mayor Bylsma did nothing wrong. I've been saying that since July. All year, Mayor Bylsma did nothing wrong. He's been dunked in the media, in the press. St. Catharines has 10 times the population of West Lincoln. There are 7 members on regional council in St. Catharines and 2 in West Lincoln. So there's a bit of a power imbalance. The influence, the culture, whatever it is.
So I think in conclusion, Jim, I thought about it too. I think what we have is we do have a bit of an improvement that we need to go through with the integrity commissioner process. We need to think a little bit more about how councilors are reacting to this, and are they using it for political theater, or are they actually looking to make our community more inclusive? I think there's this real challenge that the integrity commissioner process faces as we go forward, because it has a very specific need, but it could be manipulated in such a way that certain political views are advanced and other political views are not discussed. I think Ed Smith is a good community member. I think we have a lot of good counselors that are involved in these things, and they all have to be more inclusive. And that's really the process that I'd like to see unfold, is a way of moving forward with our integrity commissioner, the code of conduct itself, that is really based on making our community more inclusive.
I wonder how many times I would have been censured for if I was a regional councillor based on my political
daily,
speech.
I think. So,
if we're gonna wrap things up, can we jump ahead to a later link, because we want to take a look at the new and improved pride flag. I think we should jump ahead to clip 7, link 7, actually, which is the integrity commissioner regarding Black Lives Matter. I just want to quickly draw attention to it. Yeah. So this is some highlighted portion from the integrity commissioner report. So I do recommend that people take some time and read through the integrity commissioner report to see for themselves how it's written, what it says, and it addresses 3 topics: the pride flag, Black Lives Matter, and what it calls Indigenous rights. Of the 3, I disagree with its assessments on the pride flag and Black Lives Matter, and fairly, as Jeff said, agree that the comments were offensive regarding the Indigenous community. I just wanted to also make my point on that. So we're just going to jump quickly through these images. So what we're seeing here is the section from the Black Lives Matter section of the article of the Integrity Commission report. Jump ahead and you'll see their references. So how do you validate as an integrity commissioner that all lives matter is offensive? Well, you check out what the blogosphere is saying, I guess.
Wow.
And you just take a quick look through what those blogs are. So these are, not blogs, but they're like, BuzzFeed level news reports. That's not a tweet. Yeah, it's a screenshot. There you go. So, so the reference. So here's Vice President Pence was like told to bury Black Lives Matter, and he's like, nah, all lives matter. And huge controversy, like Jeff pointed out, the Americanization. So this is an American context. So Jeff totally validating your point here. I know we don't have much time, so let's just skip through this. And I'm not sure if there's anything left in this slideshow. So just another article
I've seen before, and that last one was a number of Black Canadian women who said that all lives matter is offensive to them. And I think ultimately, if all lives matter is seen to be offensive, these ladies do give a good point as to why, and they feel that it's offensive, but I don't think they think, and I'm going from memory here, they never say that it means that somebody's racist or that they're a white supremacist. It just means that it offends them, and I think that's a big. And it's like,
so what if you're offended? If it's not criminal and the cops can't come to your house for it, then shut up. Yeah, you want to declare your offense to it? Great, but it's not a crime, so zip it, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, not zip, but not zip, but yeah.
I mean, I think it's important that we understand that people perceive the All Lives Matter slogan in that way. But ultimately,
well, I think it's important that we perceive Black Lives Matter as an anti-civic rights movement. So I don't know what you think, but I think that Black Lives Matter is anti-civic rights. It's not an extension of the civic rights movement. It's not 1960s 2.0. It's unless you're in China. It's a cultural revolution.
Guys, what do you think that we're on this road for? Like, in a time where we're more tolerant than we've ever been, we're less racist than we've ever been, we strive for more inclusion than we ever have. Why this sudden focus on, I hear Justin Trudeau say it almost every time he speaks, that every institution in Canada is systemically racist. Now, words are important, and I've said this 1,000 times. When you say systemically racist, that means all throughout the whole body. So when you say the RCMP is systemically racist, you mean the whole thing, everyone in it. When you say all cops are bastards, that means all cops in it. There's a local reporter for the Standard of Indigenous. They run a podcast. Like, this guy constantly, nobody is calling this guy a racist for saying all cops are pigs or all cops are racist. But this is what we're getting fed.
Listening to his show with my kids in the back, and they asked me to turn it off because they felt like, the number of times that white people were called oppressors.
Yeah.
Right.
Nobody's calling this guy, like, I've called him a racist on many times, whatever. I don't think it carries all that much weight because I get called that all the time too, but he's clearly constantly carving on white people all the time.
Well, I think that's, there have been a lot of harms done to the Native community in Canada. I had a conversation as a result of this with a friend of mine who's Native, and he told me about how he was placed with a white family in St. Catharines. He was adopted, and how he's reunited with his Native family. It's kind of a harrowing story. Like, we have to really understand the harms that were done during the Indian Agent period and so on. But I think what's also interesting is, like you say, Jim, we put an end to those programs. We put an end to a lot of it. And although we can understand the legacy that leaves, your point is what caused this new sort of movement. And I think this is where, Sandor and you would agree that identity politics is being used for political purposes, and there could be some negative consequences to that. And I think, that's probably where the conversation's going, right?
Did the IC actually take exception to Bylsma saying that he doesn't capitalize black because it's not a proper name?
No. You're misreading it. Okay. It's Bylsma who took exception to the IC.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay. All right.
No, but that's a good point. The IC is pretending that All Lives Matter is an organization like Black Lives Matter by giving it a proper noun capitalization. And Bylsma is saying, no, it's just a sentiment. It's just three words that, in his words, connotatively and denotatively mean the same thing. Let's jump to clip 7 because we got to wrap it up. We got a really great conversation. I'm so happy to have been here with both of you.
I think I'm on 7.
We got to talk about the pride flag because that was, my point of view is, you take a look at it, number 7.
Mm-hmm.
That's, did I say 7?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
It looks like it might be down.
Number 8.
Okay.
Number 8. I'm sorry.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So here we go. So this is the central story that we laid out earlier in the show. You can scroll down to see through this news. So here's the news items, the pride flag. So take a look at that beautiful 6-color pride flag. This is the pride flag that you would have in mind when discussing a pride flag. This is the pride flag that, as you can see, CKTV put in the news while discussing that Bylsma hadn't yet approved, as we discussed, raising the flag, and they made a controversy and so on and so forth. What I'm about to tell you is that there was a bait and switch right under your nose. So close this, scroll down, and you'll get the wish.com version of it. So scroll down a little bit. So there you go. On the left is what you expected, and on the right is what you got. Welcome to and on the right, this is the new pride flag. This is the critical theory pride flag. So this isn't your second wave feminist pride flag. This is like your fourth wave intersectionalist pride flag. How do I know that? Well, scroll down and you'll see Brock University promoting this flag and clearly articulating what it means. That's on the left is them raising the new pride flag, not the one they sold to the public, not the one they presented to council even. Actually, I'm not sure if they presented it. They just called it a pride flag. They didn't be like, and it's going to be this one with the chevrons. So take a look at the next one, and you'll see the definition. So here's what the definition of the colors are according to Brock University, and they'd know. And I just want to point this out in following up on what Jeff has been saying, that this isn't necessarily just an importing of American politics, but this is postmodern global academia. The infiltration isn't just merely Americanization. I think that the sentiment towards Black Lives Matter as a riotist organization, that's American, but the ideological precepts that inform these activists are academic and highly internationalist. And so you can, I guess if you want to read it, you can see on screen what it says. Turns out that when Mayor Bylsma was saying that the pride flag is the representation of identity politics, look at this identity politics. QTPOC TSL GBTQ plus. Mayor Bylsma said in his comments on the radio that identity politics is us dividing ourselves 1,000 different ways.
Yeah, intersectionality.
And so I'm just drawing full attention to the fact that he wasn't off point. He was more on point than he knew, actually.
And so again, this community deserves respect. I'm not going to try and say anything negative about this community, but I think what's important here is the issue of, here we have something that's going to be done by the community. There's a certain belief that it means we'll raise this flag, and that we know what this flag means. And it's been something that's been established in our community. People are aware of it and so on. And then because there are no questions allowed, we have something else that's put up. Nobody's had any time to ask any questions about or come to an understanding of what it is. And even though it may be completely harmless, the problem is that there were no questions. Nobody even had an opportunity to say, well, what does this mean? What are these things? How do we understand it? How do we support it if that's what should be done? Or if there is something that is offensive to the community that might be represented here, how do we make sure that we don't use that flag and use what was, understood? So
final thoughts?
I doubt they would quibble over it. I doubt that they would even understand the difference or look it up, or if they were presented the information that I gave them, they'd clap twice as loud. Be like, yeah, for sure. Failing to recognize the inherently divisive nature of identity politics. There's a lot of concern about systemic racism, and I'll tell you this much: critical race theory is systemic racism.
You got that right. Boys, I really appreciate your time. Jeff,
I think everyone here has their own political views, right? And
certainly.
Absolutely.
All right, boys, I really appreciate your time. We took it, I took it all the way. Bridget Monroe, keep watching with a friend. Keep up the excellent work. She's on Facebook. exposing the truth. Yannick Tessier, get fired, get in trouble, be brave, and never stop fighting. You know who says that? I can't read this one because it's probably racist. Laura Yip, laugh at those code of conducts. All right, boys, I appreciate your time. Thanks for coming out. Jeff Flouks is my guest. Sandor Liggett Falvey. Got it, right? I got it? Liggett
You
Falvey.
got it. You've had.
Oh, so that's how you cut them. You cut them hard. That's how you cut them right there. It's all good. Comment below. Share if you like it. And get out your $5. Thursday nights, we're usually here at 7 p.m. EST. What do I got coming up this week? Ooh, I got Mathieu Murda next week. I'm working on Mark Emery. Who else? Dr. Deborah So's been avoiding me. Here's where you find me on the fake book. What? Who's tagging me in this garbage? Dude, this is unrelated. How pathetic and boring is your life when you take time to paste the conversation you had with someone the night before and send it to someone else? Not the whole convo, just part of it. In the hopes of what? FYI, my wife told me I should watch what I say to Jim Fannin on Messenger because he's not a good old boy for MND. That's Notre Dame. He's a piece of shit. So this guy, last week, we're making plans to get together and talk about high school. I don't remember him from high school, but he swears he went to Notre Dame. Dude, I don't know who your wife is. I don't date married women. I don't communicate with married women, and I don't know who your wife is. So how she got parts of our conversation in her what? In her spam folder? Dude, fucking shake yourself. Did I make it through this whole show without dropping an F-bomb until now? My piece of advice to you, Jim Fannin: go out and have someone perform fellatio on you. Stop spending so much time spreading hate. Just the advice of an old Irish Dago mutt who was brought up with a teeny bit of morals, integrity, and respect in class. Cheers, fish face. And then the pylon goes. So I have no idea what this Homo sapien is talking about. But it makes for good clicks, eh? Kevy. All right. Peace. Love. Hug your neighbor. And for crying out loud, just rip that mask off your face. It's filthy dirty, and it's not helping. I love you. I'm out.